Well, thank you so much, Valeriana. That was a beautiful, beautiful speech, and we're so honored to have you be our keynote speaker. Your story is amazing, and I know it took you a lot to get to where you are today. Can you share a few memorable moments, perhaps a high note and a low note of your journey?
Thank you so much, first of all, for having me. And that's such a great question. I would say, maybe I'll go to the low note first, because oftentimes there's a tendency to jump to just like the happier things. And I also think that the lowest points about life also make up for like what our journey really encompasses. I would say like the toughest or the lowest parts of my story that I think have been difficult even now as an adult to really come to terms with is just dealing with grief. I think in my case in particular, my father passed when I was 18 years old. So I was just like, had just fresh out of high school. And he, in many respects, was the center point in our family around like really our culture, the language, all the things, and also like our family storyteller and historian, and also much of the inspiration behind how I ended up where I am today. And I just think of all the efforts that he really centered around liberation and supporting other immigrants and families and households who were experiencing other forms of oppression. And I think as a society, we don't necessarily often talk enough about grief and how it shapes us, and how oftentimes there isn't necessarily a timestamp that says at this point in time you will stop grieving completely. And so, yeah, I think that grief has shaped me in a way, and has also allowed me to have a lot more empathy and humanize people in ways that I don't know if I would have had I not necessarily have that lived experience. Um, so yeah, that was definitely a low point, but also like a humbling point in my life. And then also just being a survivor of violence. But in particular, the high note, I would say, um, there's several. The most current one right now is actually being a brand new mom. Um, I I absolutely love being a mom. I never understood really the depth, the breadth of this journey, and to be a Black woman who's navigated medical healthcare system that isn't necessarily pro-Black. There are a lot of instances where, unfortunately, anti-Blackness has really played a role in why many Black women have not necessarily survived even going through childbirth. And yeah, after the ordeal that I went through, just to hold my baby in my arms is such a gift. And if anything, I think it actually gives me more of a tenacity to even fight harder for the things that I think are so important, especially as it pertains to social justice and interrupting oppression. And I think that just speaks to family for me, to be able to live in Washington State, and like now my whole family is actually here, my immediate family, and to have navigated a pandemic where I know many of us have probably know people who have even passed, and we're still here. I think the high point is recognizing that even when you're experiencing aspects of feeling like you're just surviving, there's still also room to also thrive. So I hope I kind of answered your question there.
Yes, you definitely did. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your transparency and sharing your story and your journey with us. And I know in this society, sometimes it's just go, go, go. A lot of us have lost parents, and it's okay to grieve. And just like you said, there's no specific time limit. Grieving may come in waves. It may come years after you thought that you were completely over the process. And it's definitely a natural process and something that we should all take time to do. So thank you so much. And then also the high point of motherhood, with all that's going on in the world these days, it's just so beautiful. Whether you go through the medical system or whether you go through the adoption system, just to nurture another life, it's such a beautiful thing. So thank you for sharing those two things with us. Now, currently, there are a lot of refugees coming into the United States, and many who are watching may be refugees themselves, or they may be giving support to refugees coming into the United States. So, what words would you pass on to those battling the tough journey of coming
Mhm.
to the US?
That's a really good question. I would say, I think what comes to mind when I think of, I would even say immigrants, because I think it also encompasses the refugee community as well, and also being a former refugee myself. Um, I think the wording that the US actually got right was calling like folks who were like under the DACA status dreamers. I look at refugees as we're dreamers collectively, not just folks with a DACA status, because many of us have to forego something. We either are having to maybe even give up being with our close knit family, community, friends to walk into a place or travel to a space that is foreign to us. The culture may be like literally the opposite of like what we're used to, and in hopes of something that centers our safety, not even just necessarily bringing us wealth, but just so that there's a room for human flourishment, or human flourishing. And when I think of the journey of being a refugee myself, it is not a journey for the faint-hearted. And when I say that, I'm specifically thinking of like, what is that tale? The tortoise and the is it the rabbit and
In the hair.
the
Hmm.
hare? And I remember hearing that story as a child and not necessarily recognizing like how that would even play out in my life. And in many respects, when you are a refugee, you actually navigate a very, in many respects, I would even say a long-winded immigration process. For some, it's pretty straightforward, but for others, it may feel like there are people who will go or surpass you, like people that you've like maybe come in the country with at around the same time, and their processes have gone faster than yours. And you're just like taking everything like step by step, and you're trying to follow all these different rules, and it can bog you down. But one thing I will say is to know that like the land that you're walking into, first of all, was obtained through exploitative means. That's number one. Number two, the original landowners are indigenous, Native Americans, and that's where the respect, in my personal opinion, really needs to go to. And so, even though there are laws and there are stipulations and there are things that we have to follow by default, I want folks who are navigating a refugee scenario or situation or life experience that you feel like this is never ending, to have actually gone through this entire process myself. And it took, like 15 plus years of my life. And this is like the first part of my life where I'm not having to ever worry about like having to renew something so constantly, or ensure that all this paperwork is done in a certain way. And here I am in my later 30s, now just experiencing that. But all my other parts of my life, it was always about like making sure I complied with some immigration rule process, and it was very difficult. But I want to say, like, uh, do not be swayed by the notion that you don't belong here. Number one, you do. This country is very much a melting pot. But not only that, you serve a purpose. Like you're obviously on a journey in this life, and this journey has led you to this point, and your story is still unfolding. With immigration or even without. And I even want to speak to those who are undocumented or even underdocumented. You may be navigating a situation where you feel like everything's like under the table. But that doesn't necessarily mean that your entire story will be under the table. Everything has an appointed time, everything has a purpose and a place. And I would say keep still showing up as hard as you can for yourself, first of all. And if you are a part of a community or you are still looking for a community, this is a great community to be a part of. That's number two. And then also number three, like the dream is still alive within you. The dreams that you had before you came into this country are still valid. Continue to walk in a trajectory that centers that, because that is what will actually keep you focused on why you even came here. And I name that because sometimes you can be lost in the system of what it is that America has become. Um, but this country needs you. We need you, your skill sets, your dreams, your visions, all the things that are part of even your bloodline that you thought like, hey, I don't know how that's going to play out in this part of my life. Um, I found that I found purpose in this country more so than even when I felt like I didn't know how I fit in. So my hope is that like this is just the sign that you needed to really like stand firm on the journey that you're on.
Amazing. Thank you so much for those words. I really love when you said that dream is still alive in you, because just like you said, a lot of times, though this is the land of opportunity, there are a lot of things that can put a dampen on that dream and
Yeah,
make us feel that we have to settle or kind of quiet down that dream. But like you said, that dream is still alive in you. So keep that dream alive. Thank
yeah.
you so much, Valeriana. I
You're so welcome.
appreciate you so much. And thank you to all those that are watching. I
Yeah.
trust that these words have blessed you and have spoken to a deeper part of you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to just seeing what comes out of this, even this discussion. And even more so, folks, please support this organization. They're really about this life and just championing folks from different walks of life. And again, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity and just we're big supporters at SJF of the work that you're all doing.
Gratitude.